Here, anyone applying online for a driving licence from tomorrow will have to answer a question on organ donation. Applicants will have the option of signing up for the organ donors register or deferring their decision. But they will not now be able to skip the question as they have in the past. It's hoped the scheme will boost the number of donors. Less than a third of Britons are currently registered. It's been introduced by the government's Nudge Unit, an initiative to persuade rather than force people to change their behaviour, as Ashatana reports.
Good morning, Mrs. Syed. How are you doing? You're looking great.
Dilshad Syed had been on dialysis for 7.5 years. On Wednesday, she had a kidney transplant.
I'm so happy for him and for you. You both recovered beautifully.
Her operation was only made possible after her son donated his kidney to another patient, as he was not a suitable candidate. And in return, a perfect match was found for his mother.
It's amazing. The feeling is great. It's amazing how quickly you become well.
What are you looking forward to doing most that you couldn't do before?
Going shopping, going on the tube and roaming around and going to the cinema.
In a bid to increase the amount of organ donors in the UK, the government has signalled it will be targeting motorists first. The Driver and Vehicle Licence Agency, the DVLA, already asks if applicants want to be donors. But from tomorrow, it will be mandatory that anyone applying for a new or replacement licence must give an answer. The DVLA's existing scheme is already responsible for about half of the 1 million new donor registrations each year, and transplant surgeons say they believe this change will improve donor rates.
I believe there are 8,000 patients on the waiting list now, and the maximum you can transplant is probably around 3,500 patients a year. So you can think about the other 4,500 patients who are going to be waiting, and God, unfortunately, they do end up dying on the waiting list.
Like most of his professional colleagues, Professor Hakim would prefer a compulsory scheme where consent is presumed unless an individual specifically says otherwise. But the government rejected this approach in favour of giving people a nudge in the right direction.
When this book was published, it caused a storm in some Tory circles. Nudge theory seems to offer a way to change people's behaviour to good outcomes, but by manipulation rather than the so-called nanny state. And before the election, David Cameron expressed his enthusiasm in the theory.
With the right prompting, or what Sunstein and Richard Thaler in their latest book have called a nudge, we change our behaviour to fit in with what we see around us.
And that's why the question, which was voluntary, now has to be answered and has been moved to the start of the DVLA's licence application. These may be small changes, but it's hoped the impact will be big. In June of this year, the number of people on the NHS organ donor register hit a record 18 million. But with more than 7,500 people in need of a transplant and 3 people dying every day while waiting for an organ, the need for more donors is still high. Professor Hakim says he'd like to see the number of organ donors in the UK double through this policy, which would not only transform the lives of patients, but their families as well.